Dear friends, I come to you not as a perfect man, but as one using his imperfections to try and shape the future. I am here not to compete with anyone, but to provide a platform where we can learn from each other. I will accept criticism, for it has always helped me grow exponentially. I am here to remind you that we don't have to know too much to react. We just have to use whatever little we have to make a move. We are in a time when anyone not willing to join this movement is asking us to fight using tactics of morality against an immoral, suppressive, repressive system. It is our duty to find common ground, make forgiveness possible, and unite together against the enemy. Let our strength not be defined by the praises or gifts we receive, but by the times we'll fail, get betrayed or fall, and yet find the courage to get back up and stand tall side by side. We are in undeniably tough and unavoidable situation, because if we avoided every place where enmity once confined us, we would not have even stood tall. We stand now because we put our differences aside. It is our duty to walk by faith, belief, and understanding instead of simply walking in doubt. We should distance ourselves from hypocrisy, betrayal, and greed. That will only make African dictators, our tormentors, more prideful. I choose competition in sports, tolerance in politics, fairness in business, and faith in religion. I have been betrayed by relatives and close friends who do not understand the beauty of loyalty. I have been judged by the weak who would not even sneeze in front of their oppressor. But guess what? It is all part of a hiccup in a fight bigger than you and I. A smart man once said, courage is not the absence of fear, but the understanding that there is something more important than fear is amazingly beautiful. We should be critical of a world where people are awarded for mediocrity instead of being pushed to surpass it. It is not about how much you have, but what you do with what you have. Now, what are you going to do about the pain you are feeling right at this moment? Remember, I am your friend, and if you cannot listen to a friend, you'll never listen to an enemy. Your son, Fahad, Amir, Nsubuga. Assalamu alaikum. Nyumya bulungi oba nedda? In fact kisi tunamwe mulina okubeera ne vako. abantu baffe. They have you guys ready? I want my water. Contact my assistant, Olabe, what they're up to right now. Just contact them and see what they're up to, please. When you guys are ready, you tell me. Can I have the rest of my speech? Chisitu. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The people are complaining that they can't hear me. Are they? Can they hear me? Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to our first press conference of this year. We had organized to do this probably in March, because we never thought that what is happening right now would happen, and so we decided to move it up front. Tulabenga tukwatagana bulungi. Secondly, we are going to use two languages, English and Luganda, for purposes of better interpretation. Kwegamba buli muntu ategeere kitugezaako okwogera. So do not get disturbed when I try to mix up the languages. It's because I would be trying to make my information easily accessible ku bannayuganda bonna binandyagadde bagifune. As we told you today, it is going to be about the election fraud that happened in our country, Uganda. For the first time in the history of our nation,
Ugandans came out overwhelmingly and they voted and they voiced and they protested okusinzira ku biki ebihappeninga mu ggwanga lyaffe. But secondly, as much as many people came out, for the first time, this happened to be the most brutal and petty election ever. When I say brutal, I mean many of the candidates bayogera kitono to what they had to do. The message was less delivered, but brutality yali a lot more than what you should expect in a normal campaign. I have to say, maybe because Uganda teri normal right now, that's the abnormal campaign. A few things bibagambe bya affecting a campaign yaffe mwe mwali pandemic, which of course the government used as an excuse to deny a leveled ground to all the candidates. Naye nga ate bo bakozesa omukisa guno ogwa pandemic still to campaign n'okuwaayo bye baagala byonna. My people are complaining about the network. Can I have my water, please, before I go further? Now, nga sinaba kuwa way forward. This is how we think. According to the little time we had and the investigation we could do mu kaseera akatono, we conclude nga tugamba that the election was thoroughly rigged. Nga bakozesa methods ez'enjawulo. The first method for me was mental manipulation. Mental manipulation, okubeera awo ne babuzaabuza obwongo bw'abantu. Ekisooka, prior to the elections, they made sure nti emundu, guns, soldiers, helicopters, or you can call them choppers hovering around, just to psychologically intimidate and portray an image nti singa mulonda change e Uganda, olutalo lugenda kujja. But here's the amazing thing. Even after intimidating Ugandans with all the artillery, Ugandans still voiced their concerns, still protested through the vote. And as if that was not enough, ku lunaku lw'okuwaayo oba ku lunaku lw'okuwa results ate ne bikyuka. However, nga tetunnaba kutuuka ku kya kuwaayo results, okubba kwa kalulu, we believe it started from the time bweba President Museveni we yali agenda okukola wealth creation campaign. In that process yali agenda ayita mu bantu, one, to see if his love has been lost. And then when they identified nti abantu tebakyamwagala nga yebamwagala ngedda, and then for them bo ne batuula ne batandika okulenga down strategies on how they are going to rig the elections. Two, the denial of some candidates like Honorable Kyagulanyi okwaccessinga abawagizi be specifically mu biseera by'okuyimba ne bamusaako envubo. We all remember all the petty times bagambanga nti kati muleete ambulances zibeerewo nga tugenda oyimba, muleete biki, ebyo byonna nga babiteekawo okulemesa oli okuyisa message ye in music. At that time they were campaigning and making sure they are decampaigning this gentleman, Honorable Kyagulanyi. Naye ng'ebyo byonna tetubiraba. The second time was during the moment aba people power we were getting enforced to change from people power ng'ekisinde bakole national unity platform. And when they did that, omuntu ayinza okugamba nti bakikola mu bubba kuba naffe twali surprised. President Museveni n'akyusizaawo abantu abamu ku Electoral Commission. Now, anyone could ask himself, why are all these things happening, or why were they happening at the time a certain group of politicians or party was making moves? Because during that time, bano bakyusa the people power ne bakiza mu NUP bataremwa mubajjukira ne babagoba from the Electoral Commission. But remember, they are saying it has to be independent. However, just because the Taremwas failed to know, like anyone, like all of us, the plan that these guys were doing, ne babajjako. Ne bateekawo abantu baabwe abalala. 2, if you remember well, even in those times, amagye ne getting involved mu kukyusa kw'obukulembeze bw'ekibiina ekimu. And I remember I came out and I asked General Omulambanga Muhoozi, does it make sense nti ekibiina ekya political party when it's changing obufuzi bwakyo oba obukulembeze ate ow'amagye ye bimukwatirako wanga ate alina kubeera non-partisan? Because I remember asking, do they do it to parties like FDC, the Democratic Party, UPC, JEMA, etc.? Ninge era si bwe kiri. All these moves were being done, nenga ffe tulowooza they are just trying to frustrate a certain group of individuals. But the rigging was now beginning. Bwe tuvaawo ne tudda mu time ya campaign. You see, the government used the pandemic as an excuse to deny a leveled ground to the opposition candidates. But what is disturbing, and this has always been a problem in our country, is the health minister herself, Jane Ruth Acheng, ne Diana, ne minister abalanga Evelyn Anite, they kept on campaigning, and you know these videos were everywhere. Gentlemen like Mike Mukura, baberanga mu bitundu byabwe when they are campaigning for their candidate. But yet, when it reached a time for this other group of politicians, be it FDC, be it the National Unity Platform, be it Democratic Party, n'ebibi n'ebirala, they were being denied for the same reasons. Eyo yonna nga rigging eri mu kutandika. However, because people kept being hopeful. And they kept on going. And so we appreciate you for not giving up even in times of misery and sorrow. Because kyewuunyisa for you to say that I'm going to compete with someone naye ate n'omusiba empingu emikono n'amagulu mbu ate mugende mu ringi mulwane, eyo tebeera fair fight. In fact, kyewuunyisa for a man who has been in power for more than 3 decades o campaigninga thoroughly nga bw'ataddeko n'okusasula abantu ab'enjawulo. Because for me, when someone has been in power for so long, it can also mean that bw'oba olina ebintu by'okoledde abantu mu bungi, you don't need too much. You don't need to bring too much violence here, violence there, violence everywhere to prove that you are in power. By'okoze bye biba birina okukwogerera. But because osanga bye baali bakoze was less than what they were telling the public, and they knew that the public might deny them, ne bateekawo embeera eyo enzibu ddala. During that time, by introducing a curfews, but ate nga bo bennyini they do not follow them. The corruption that has turned into a religion in our country yaleeteranga abantu abamu to have stickers nga batambula obudde bwonna bwe baagala. But yet, your mothers and children were being killed for the same reason. If you remember still that same period, video y'omukaddemu eyayita nga bapoliisi bali mu mukuba kibooko. Doesn't that bother you? These people were trying to put us in a box. All of us, nga saawudde muwagizi wa National Resistance Movement, National Unity Platform, wa Forum for Democratic Change n'ebintu ebirala, n'ebibiina ebirala. The rigging had started long time ago. Katutuuse ku kinyusi. The time of the elections. Many of you remember when they said, tokkirizibwa kubeera na kamera kukwata. That tokkirizibwa kurecordinga kintu kyonna nga elections ziri mu process. And it's that at this same time bwe bakwata information overflow ne bagikatinga off. This was done in a way nti bajjako social media. Bwe bamala okujjako social media ne basalako internet completely. Completely. Now in a democratic country, anyone would wonder that yes, we are in a democratic country like they say. And yes, maybe they have a lot of people that support them. Then why go through all this mental torture? Awo wonna nno nga bali mu kubba bululu. Awo tutuuse mu mental manipulation. Many of you will agree with me that you left so many polling stations nga mulina results ndala. But at the time when Byabakama was singing his results nga tababawulidde na wajje ziva, results nga mulaba ndala. In fact, one of the reasons lwaki bajjako social media, and I want you to think about it, meditate on this. If you guys from Masaka, Mbarara, Mbale, Busoga, Kampala were filming yourselves nga muzina amazina ag'obuwanguzi nga ebitambula ku social media, it would have been very difficult for Byabakama okulangirira nti ate President Museveni awangudde. It would have been very difficult. Because twandibadde tulaba kirala, twandibadde tulaba tension ndala eri mu bantu nti abantu bali mu celebratinga ku buli polling station. So ono bwe yandirangiridde kyandi raising the tensions ezibeetera abantu okubeera aggressive. And so they had to cut off the information overflow or the information flow to make sure preventinga mwe abanditandise okucelebratingirawo nga bukyali. akasembayo byabakama ke yakozesa. He made sure, or they made sure, that at night, as you guys were waiting for him to announce the results, what he did was to put President Museveni up front immediately, so that tomorrow morning, webucha kumacha, when he's still the one leading, as they say, many of you would not be surprised. But I want you to picture this. If they had put any other candidate, be it Patrick Oboth Amir, General Mugisha Muntu, and most importantly, omuntu gwe twalabye nga tutta obululu bungi ku opposition, Honorable Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. Kirowoozeemu, think about it. If any opposition candidate yasulanga yali ku waggulu, and then very early in the morning Ugandans ne bazuukuka nga President Museveni yali waggulu, that would have brought tensions in the country. So to stop that, they said immediately, ne baggwako ensonyi nti mubwanguyizeewo. Obululu mubwanguyizeewo mubuteeke maaso abantu let them wake up in the morning when we are still the ones in the lead, so that they don't have any way to protest the results. But also, one of the other things, the deployment that was shown all over media, the deployment that was talked about by the security organs, that tulaba ebifaananyi ebivaayo. We are seeing pictures of young children as police officers. We are seeing pictures of bouncers. Some of them are thugs as police officers. Mbali bakuuma kalulu. Does that make sense to you? In fact, the other thing that does not make sense, you start hearing of accusations. Nti ballot box bajibye. You hear anti ballot boxes satu. But then they had deployed. So if the deployment was that heavy, and if the deployment was for the same reason of protecting the vote, then why would we hear issues like ballot boxes bazibye? Ladies and gentlemen, this is not me turning you into being hopeless into mugwemu amaanyi. This is me telling you that you did what you were supposed to do as the people of Uganda. You protested peacefully by the use of a ballot. Nibatandika okukimanya, and we are seeing this everywhere. Videos are coming in and day out. Representatives of different political parties are being run down, are being tortured. And then that's when we realized that this is not, or was not, an election like we had hoped or wanted, but it was a selection most especially for President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Now, these are the few statements that I sat down yesterday at 3 a.m. Nempandika with hope, with courage, with patience, and at the same time with sorrow. To the NRM government, and specifically to President Museveni, or Yoweri Tibuhaburwa Museveni. In a certain interview, they asked him, why is it that the youth are protesting against your government? This is where, ladies and gentlemen, we pay close attention. First and foremost, Uganda has the youngest population in the world. So it is not by mistake or by bandwagon when they choose to ask for seats from a government that makes them feel they have no share in their country. And for you to give examples of how Idi Amin and Obote were dangerous dictators will never make sense to them, especially when you are the only one they have seen as a president for more than 3 decades. It does not make sense. Gwe mukulembeze aluddeko emyaka gyonna. But yet you are telling the youngest population in the world, ladies and gentlemen, that Amin and Obote were dictators. Ninga ate the youngest population is looking at you nti babazadde kwebali, bazadde abaana nga kwoli. And you are telling them that bali bebali ba dictator, bebataalaba. It cannot make sense to that generation, never. Even if you came in power when the oldest person was 20 or 15 years old, they have the courage to call you a dictator because still oba ofuze Uganda okusinga omuntu omulala yenna. Secondly, and it doesn't make sense to them when you use slogans like securing your future after 34 years in power. It does not. Because questions like, what would he accomplish in 5 years that he could not do in over 3 decades will rise. People will ask, kiki kyagenda okukola myaka 5 okusecuringa future yaffe fe abato mu ggwanga that he could not secure in the past 3 decades? It would not make sense to them. In fact, it is for that same reason that many of them chose to join a man who used a simple slogan, "We are removing a dictator." Because that relates to their mindset. I want you to picture this. A man who has been in power for more than 3 decades says, "I'm securing your future." A man who has just come in politics for not more than 5 years says, "We are removing a dictator." And both of these people are campaigning to the youngest population in the world by the use of common sense. It does not make sense for them to join or to say that they will support a man who has been there nga abalimba buli kaseera. No, it would not make sense to them. This does not mean tewali bamuwagidde. But when we say it does not make sense, we know that the majority of able-minded people cannot support a man that follows a slogan like that after so many years in power. It does not make sense to them. In fact, it reminds them of the time you said that the problem with Africa is leaders who overstay in power. But here you are trying to get to 40 years. Kati oba otegeeza ki? Does that make sense to you? And when you say that it surprises you for Ugandans to say that they are being oppressed in a peaceful country, I am telling you, Mr. President, it should not surprise you. Because peace is not the absence of wars, but rather the presence of political, social, and economic justices. Olw'okuba nti amasasi oba abantu tebali mu kuddukadduka bagenda mu nsiko nga bwe kyali mu 1980s, that does not mean that Uganda is a peaceful country. Because ekyo si kye kitegeeza nti waliwo emirembe. Ladies and gentlemen, it is never a peaceful country when the president of the nation says that the killing of Ugandans in the recent protest in our country was a rehearsal for his soldiers. It is not peaceful. It is never a peaceful country when the Secretary General of your own party says that the state will kill your children just because they're asking for change. And we all know this. Kasule Lumumba is on record saying this. It never makes sense to them, or it is never a peaceful country when your ministers like Saida Bumba say, we will rule you whether you like it or not. It is never a peaceful country when your generals publicly say that police have a right to shoot Ugandans. No. It is never a peaceful country when you cannot de-escalate tensions with negotiations other than violent intimidation. It is not. It is never peaceful when your opinion is the only one that matters in a country full of able and willing people to help it progress, move forward. It is never peaceful when a president says he is not a servant of Ugandans, but a man working and securing the future of his children and grandchildren. It is never peaceful. It is never peaceful when the Constitution keeps being changed to serve your selfish interests. Case in point, the age and term limit. Ibyo byonna byakyusibwa to make sure biyamba gwe Yoweri Tibuhaburwa Museveni. It is not peaceful. See, when Ugandans hear you use words like your army, your oil, we obviously look at you as a man who came with a hidden agenda, sugar-coated with false hopes. We look at you as a man who promised to work for us, but who never even worked with us. You have instead worked against us. And so it should not surprise you when the youth choose to protest against your government. It should not surprise you. To the opposition, the greatest asset a human should learn in times of trouble is by learning from it. But I guess it is so difficult for so many of you, or for so many leaders in the opposition, who are choosing to affront ego and pride instead of the cause that you say you are standing for. It is at this moment that you should be uniting, not fighting, for accepting that Ugandans need this to change their country. It is at this moment that you should unite for a greater cause, that you should know that this cause is better than anyone in the country or any politician anywhere. This should be about Asabulime, who was shot in broad daylight by an officer who hasn't been fully prosecuted. It should be about Akutesa, who has been in almost every corruption scandal in the country, but walking freely and endorsing his children into the government. It should be about Achirumira, not only as a slain or brave officer, but also a whistleblower who was non-protected, but psychologically tortured until they shot him dead. It should be about the religious leaders, Kawesi, Chirumira, and many other unsolved murders. It should be about our children dying of treatable diseases when government officers are taking their children to their outside countries to give birth. It should be about future presidential candidates who might be denied the freedom to protest the electoral process, like Dr. Kizza Besigye was denied, and as I speak right now, Honorable Kyagulanyi and his wife Babi Kyagulanyi are under house arrest. Does that sound like a democratic country to you? It should be about the media that has been gagged and denied independency, especially when the country needs them more. It should be about Hussein Chanjo, who was poisoned for standing with the people of Uganda. It should be about Anyakairima, who was poisoned, and up to now we do not know why. It should be about Nebanda. It should be a Joan Kagezi. This should never be about any politician. So temwe ibara, when Ugandans choose to stand up against you too. To the security forces, you should remember that shooting unarmed civilians to impress your superiors will never equate to bravery. Atawo muba mufuuse abantu abatalina mulamwa. It is in your best interest to join those fighting to bring peace in our country and protect, and I'm serious, what's left of our constitution. Kubanga constitution yaffe has been tampered with so many times just to be sure that it serves an individual. And to the Ugandan population, you should know that the thorough rigging of elections was to turn hopeful people into hopeless. I would like you to know that once you declare someone a dictator, and I'm talking to you Ugandans, it means you must accept that to stop dictatorship is a process that requires patience, consistency, courage, and most importantly, staying hopeful. We are in a time when anyone who is not willing to join this movement is asking us to fight using tactics of morality against an immoral, suppressive regime. It is our duty, therefore, regardless of our different political, religious, or tribal differences, to fight and bring a common ground, make forgiveness possible, so that we unite against a common opponent. Earlier, I wanted to use a common enemy. But we want President Museveni to know that seeking for change does not mean that we are his enemies. We are just people or Ugandans trying to add value to our country. I'm asking you Ugandans to not be demoralized by a system that was built to serve Museveni, his family, and friends. I'm asking you to not be discouraged just because mwarabye nga babba obululu. This should make you adrenaline okubeera nga ebaddukiramu ate n'amaanyi, but with patience. And I'm making a promise to the President, Mr. Yoweri Tibuhaburwa Museveni, that dictators, no dictator in the world, can read signs ng'ekiseera kye eky'okutuuka okugenda kigenze. They never read the signs. That is why you are seeing his son, Muhoozi, using social media as if he owns all of it. Because they believe that to have a gun means to be immortal. That to have a gun means to be brave. I am telling you, and I'm asking you, nti bwe mukyayinamu akatima akasaasizi eri bannayuganda, you should do whatever you can to help the country heal from the hate that people are adopting to, from the anger that people are adopting to. Because regardless of what you do, we are the youngest generation, and time is on our side. Regardless of how you choose to frustrate us, we are the youngest generation. And so we will be as patient as we can, but as pushy as we can, until you get to understand that we need to add value to our nation. Buli we tugezaako okuvaayo, they always say that we are being funded by the Western world. But I want to ask you, a Ugandan who is watching me today, do you have to be funded to see that they are killing people in our country? Do you have to be funded to see that corruption is turning into our religion? Gwe weebuuze, for a man who says he wants to change everything in the country, bamutebira akomyawo bwaki? Are they the only people who have the capacity to lead the bank, oba okukulembera, oba okucommissioning a bank? Do we have to be funded to know that there is injustice in our country? And if they don't use nti batufundinga as a nation to fight them, bagamba nnyo that we are promoting tribalism. I want to say to the president that once you choose a vice president, and I will say it like Sekandi, when you know you will not listen to him, when you know you most probably will not take advice from him, but rather you chose him okukabinga abaganda, then you are promoting tribalism. Because that is not what we want. This generation does not care ani gwe tuleeta as long avuddemu Busoga oba mubagisu oba mubanyankole, as long as their purpose is to serve the country. Mulekeraawo okusugarcoatinga services. Because think about this. If Tumuine and Sekandi balese ekiteeso, you are Ugandan who is watching me today, who do you think they would listen to? If Tumuine and Sam Kutesa balese ekiteeso, who do you think they would listen to? So yes, Mr. President, nja kumaliza n'ebigambo by'omwami article gye nsomye olwaleero gwe bayita Muhimbise. He said that to those who say that Buganda is turning into tribalistic and other areas are turning into tribalistic, I want to remind them that in 2011, 16, 2006, the candidates that got most votes in Buganda, Bali tebabeera Buganda. It was President Museveni and Dr. Kizza Besigye. So, I'm asking you Ugandans, do not accept the preaching they are trying to impose on you. Nti muli promoting a tribalism. No. Because if he says that tribalism is growing, like George Muhimbise said, then President Museveni talina kyakolidde ensi agizizaayo exactly wawo yagisanga. So do not hate yourselves, dear Ugandans, but unite. Make them know that the tricks ze bakola tezigasa. To the opposition, this is a moment bwe muyina okukwataganira awamu. Bwe kiba kyetaaga kukumba mwenna, mugende muyamba omusajja ave mu nju, because how many more candidates be banaakwatanga ne basiba mu nju? When you go to court, then you normalize it into elections izabadde fair kati zeetaaga. But if you are to do that, start with uniting ku kino ekintu. Show us that you want unity because the people are ready to unite. N'ebigambo ebyo I would like to tell Ugandans that bivudde wange ng'omuntu. Era bwe nva wano, I'm going to call other candidates. Earlier today, I tried to talk to Honorable Kyagulanyi. And I'm serious, when the phone call went through, netandika okwogera for a minute and a half, ne bagisalako. And then it never went through again. I'm going to call other serious, when I say serious candidates, ababaddemu mu campaign eno. Nze ntuuse obuvunaanyizibwa, and I ask them to join together. And I tell them that this is the time we need them to put their pride and egos aside, so that they deliver the change that we seek for. My name is Fahad Amir Nsubuga. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.